My guest today is the European Ombudswoman Teresa Anchino. She leads the watchdog responsible for probing cases of bad administration across the EU institutions, including in response to citizens' complaints. She's approaching her one-year anniversary in the role and previously served as Portugal's Justice Minister. European Ombudswoman, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Yes.
So as I was saying, you're approaching your one-year anniversary as Ombudswoman. Over the past 12 months, do you feel you've made big progress in terms of getting the institutions to be more accountable and more transparent?
I believe that as European Ombudswoman in a very challenging times that actually we should always recognize. For the past 8-9 months, I have been concentrated in guaranteeing that I do follow my strategy in prioritizing individual complaints, allowing for fostering active citizenship and participation. And I truly believe in that the success of my mandate will be very much dependent on the success of the dialogues that I will entail with the European Union institutions, bodies, offices and agencies. I also started meeting, of course, not only the heads of the main institutions, but also the agencies, going to the member states, also meeting NGOs and guaranteeing that everyone actually in these very challenging times recognize the European Ombudsman as a very important institution that continues to monitor actively the European Union administration, and in guaranteeing that the rules are respected, that citizens continue to participate in the decision-making process, and of course that the high standards remain high.
You mentioned dialogue with the heads of the major institutions. If we look at the Commission, President Ursula von der Leyen has recently been criticized for what many feel is an opaque operation, that she and her close circle of aides is rolling back things like access to documents, transparency. Do you agree with that criticism?
So I believe you're mainly focusing on exactly the access to documents topic. And I do recognize that we do have a lot of criticism surrounding how the Commission handles access to documents requests. Allow me just to, on a bright side and positive note, to state that I do see that their commitment as well from the Commission in guaranteeing that we are compliant, that the institutions are compliant and recognize that behind the access to documents request is a fundamental right that is linked to transparency. And citizens to participate, they need to have access to the information. So if they do not have access to information, I believe that the criticisms that we hear are actually in order. But this said, there are a lot of challenges, and we see in my office these challenges through the number of complaints that we've received exactly related to the access to documents.
You're currently investigating how von der Leyen handled a request made by a journalist to release a signal message she received by the French President Emmanuel Macron discussing the ongoing EU-Mercosur trade deal. What have you found in terms of how von der Leyen dealt with that request?
So the case is still ongoing, so we are still analyzing, but there is something that I can say, and it is important. Of course, that I will look, and I am interested in understanding exactly what happened. It's very important to come up with clear conclusions related to something that actually the Court of Justice already also pointed out, the importance of having good record management systems, document management systems with registration and retention that will allow, even in an event of access to documents, to be able to, on a case-by-case basis, understand what are the documents that should be released.
We know in this case that you found that the Commission had the Commission President, von der Leyen, had the disappearing messages function activated on her Signal app, which means that she cannot retrieve them. Especially if these messages relate to ongoing policy and political discussions, should the Commission President be keeping those messages and not auto-deleting them?
Again, it's a question of transparency and accountability in a very challenging time with new tools, namely the WhatsApp messages, the Signal, or whatever the system that you use to exchange messages. If they are related to decision-making processes, they are documents. That is very clear. And if they have this possibility to be documents and be related to this decision-making process, it is very important to guarantee that you have a management system of registration and retention of these documents.
This case bears resemblance to the very high-profile so-called Pfizer Gate case, where the EU court actually found that the Commission was violating its own transparency rules. But then we've never seen those messages shared between the Pfizer CEO and von der Leyen relating to the COVID-19 vaccine contracts. Is the Commission failing to learn its lessons here? Can recommendations from you as the Ombudswoman change the way that they operate, do you think?
That's my objective, is to produce positive changes and allow constructively also for the Commission to reflect on their own systems of management of documents. I believe that that's why I said it's in this case particularly important, because it is also forward-looking to guarantee that what happened in the past does not happen in the future. And we already had cases where that was also stated, in the sense that particularly when you have an access to documents request, those documents should not just disappear. They should be retained for an analysis if they should be disclosed or not, if they should be considered documents or not.
I want to move on to another topic. You recently found that the Commission had broken its own lawmaking standards when it pushed through proposals it considered urgent, including to simplify corporate sustainability rules. Are you confident that these recommendations are being heard by the Commission?
Quite honestly, what I see is the Commission already understanding that actually they need to guarantee that the procedure that they have for decision-making has to be transparent, inclusive and evidence-based, because the number of articles, the number of coverage, media coverage that this Omnibus 1 package had already shows that the Commission has to do more, because by doing more and investing in this transparency, accountability procedures, they will also push for what they really aim with the simplification. That is to guarantee that they boost competitiveness and development, and for that they need the trust of the citizens. So if you do not have that trust, I don't think that the objectives behind the simplification will comply.
And do you think this case could have undermined trust, citizen trust in the EU institutions?
Well, the only thing that I know is that I had the complaints, and the complaints were quite huge, and that's already a sign that you should do more. Actually, one of the things that my office, it's the mission of my office, is exactly to show to citizens that not only we exist and they can file their complaints to us, but also that institutions, when they recognize that they should do more to be more transparent or more accountable, they actually voluntarily do so.
Your role often involves probing tendering processes. Now, there's an ongoing criminal investigation, which is clearly outside your mandate, into how the College of Europe was awarded a contract by the EU's diplomatic arm, the EEAS, and it involves very senior officials, including the former EU High Representative, Federica Mogherini. What does this case say about integrity in the EU institutions?
So, whenever you have these kind of allegations that are related to integrity issues, it is very important to acknowledge that you always have high risks in terms of damaging the reputation of the European Union as a whole. Past cases also show that, as well as it hinders the already very high standards that exist and efforts that actually institutions are doing to guarantee, that they do have strong integrity frameworks. I believe that from this case, I can only hope, because this is the time for justice, I can only hope that it will be solved as fast as possible, and that, of course, all the facts will be clear, and that the institutions will also be transparent and collaborative in guaranteeing that, the public can continue to trust, of course, the European Union institutions.
You have come under scrutiny recently for appointing your former head of cabinet to the most senior civil servant role in your institution, the European Ombudsman, which is the role of Secretary General. In hindsight, was this the right decision? Did it send the right message to citizens?
First of all, it is important to state that it was not a promotion. It was a selection procedure. It was not dependent from any discretionary power from my part. And you're rightly pointing to the fact that allows me to say that this procedure was a very transparent, rigorous and accountable procedure.
But you were part of that selection procedure.
I was part, but I was guaranteeing from the very beginning exactly this accountability with clear checks and balances and being very transparent and public about it. It is important exactly to state that, because in the end of the day, I also recognize that there are always these problems related to the perceptions.
There is a sense that there was a favoritism aspect here, and you are seen as the woman who is meant to be working to erase this kind of culture. In hindsight, do you think it was the right move?
To be very fair, the selection procedure was a strong procedure in terms of checks and balances and guarantee of all ethical standards from the very beginning, having a very independent selection board. I did not have the possibility to exclude people that would be eligible. All the criteria were public, and all the procedure had a very clear timeline.
So you're not concerned that this could undermine your reputation in any way?
What I can say is actually what I say to the other institutions. I'm not immune to what happened afterwards, even though I recognize that the procedure was sound in terms of legal accountability.
What do you mean by what happened afterwards?
In terms of the media coverage and the idea that, as you were saying, as a question of hindering the perception that of a possible favoritism. What is important to state here is that I'm not immune to that, and of course that I think that for the future it is important also to reflect how I can safeguard as well the institution in these kind of procedures for any kind of perception that might exist.
Teresa Anginio, thank you so much.
Thank you.